track system by the New Patriotic Party is not the best. They had a solution. They had a solution to the double track system, which is the gold and the green. They had a solution to whatever double track system has got to do. But now the Honorable Henry Idisu, the education minister, is now promising that the double track system will be cancelled in 2027. President John Dramani Mahama and the education minister, this is the time to end double track system as said in your manifesto and as part of your 120 days social contract to the youth of Ghana. Is guaranteed. There is doomsday strike in our nation to promising a 24-hour economy that will create employment, and instead becoming a president, being sworn in office, a mass dismissal occurred. And we are telling the president, the youth that have been dismissed from their workplace are crying, are becoming jobless, and these same youths will go out there to engage in crime because he has taken away their main income from them. We are asking the president, John Dramani Mahama, to rethink about this decision and to give the youth back their employment. However, months since the swearing in of the president, the policy remains unlaunched and the policy document is nowhere to be seen. What was once presented as a critical plan to modernize Ghana's economy is now nothing more than a distant hope, shrouded in confusion and lack of clarity. In the meantime, the hope of job creation through this initiative has turned into disappointment. Rather than witnessing an expansion of employment, many Ghanaians have been faced with mass layoff, particularly in the public sector. These cuts have directly impacted thousands of public workers, leaving them without income, security, and job prospects. The 24-hour economy was supposed to be a beacon of progress, offering expanded opportunities for the youth, entrepreneurs, and industries, particularly in sectors like manufacturing, services, and retail. Yet, despite the grand promise, there has no clear strategy. There is no clear strategy. There is nothing even like the 24-hour economy. Until now, a clear plan has not even been initiated. A clear plan has not even been brought forward to Parliament. And this is sad. And the youth of Ghanaian rising up to demand accountability in respect to the 24-hour economy from the President John Dramani Mahama. While we understand that policy implementation takes time, the lack of action and transparency regarding the 24-hour economy initiative has both alarming and disappointing. What was supposed to be a well thought out plan is now simply a vague concept that fails to materialize. We're still regarding the 24-hour economy initiative has been both alarming and disappointing. What was supposed to be a well thought out plan is now simply a vague concept that fails to materialize. Where still, public sector's workers are left to cope with the effect of austerity measures, while the youth and businesses are forced to deal with the fallout of government that has made unable to deliver on its promises. The fact that there is still no policy document, no concrete details, and no official announcement about how the policy will be structured or rolled out suggests that this ambitious plan may have been more about political posturing than actual policy execution. The country needs real, practical policies that are grounded in reality. The 24-hour economy policy, as it stands, is a far-fetched dream that has failed to provide any roadmap or tangible benefit to the people it promised to help. And in the meantime, students, workers, and businesses are suffering the consequences of a government that continues to delay the launch of the policies that are meant to change the lives of ordinary Ghanaians. Suppression of free speech, an alarming trend, undermine youth confidence. In a disturbing escalation of state power, the recent raid on the home of Reverend Intim Fodio and the arrest of outspoken activist Okatechie Efrifa have sent shockwaves through Ghana's democratic community. This act clearly targeting individuals for expressing dissenting views are an affront to freedom guaranteed under Ghana's constitution and a direct threat to the foundational values of democracy. Tescon ATU strongly condemns this act. In any democratic society, and I repeat, in any democratic society, free speech, dissent, and whistleblowing are not crimes. These are never crimes. They are livelihood of accountability and civic participation. Whistleblowing in particular is not a privilege to be granted at the government's convenience. It is a constitutional right and a democratic duty, especially when it exposes wrongdoing or abuse of public office. Good afternoon, members of the press, distinguished guests, students, and fellow citizens of Ghana. On behalf of the Tertiary Students Confederacy of the MPP at the Accra Tech University, we extend our gratitude for your presence here today. We gather not out of convenience, but out of necessity, driven by a collective frustration and deep concern over the direction of governance, accountability, and the future of Ghanaians. Our address today is rooted in facts, fueled by the lived realities of students and the youth, and anchored by our unwavering commitment to truth and national development. In the run-up of the 2024 general elections, President John Dramani Mahama, beyond the 200-page manifesto, shared a 120-day contract social document in which he pledged to deliver several interventions within his first 4 months as president. May 5th, 2025, marks the 120th day of his administration. And as part of our promises projected, your first 120 days has been uninspiring, and we, the youth of the New Patriotic Party, believe the troubling matters are getting more. On the matter of democracy, the president is taking intended or unintended roots at the core of Ghana's democracy. These are some of the promises as part of the 26 promises made by the President Mahama, in which he hasn't fulfilled. Within the first 120 days in office, He said he will review taxes and levies on vehicle and equipment imported into the country for industrial and agricultural purposes. There was no mention of plans to implement such promises in the 2025 budget presented by the finance minister. I'll first start by the broken promises on free tuition, level 100 students and persons living with disabilities. In a much publicized move, the government announced the allocation of 499.8 million Ghana cedis to support first-year students in public tertiary institutions under a no academic fee policy. This process was celebrated as a bold and progressive step, one that offers struggling families and vulnerable students a glimmer of hope amid rising living costs and economic pressure. For level 100 students, especially those from the economically disadvantaged backgrounds, the promise of free tuition brought relief. Many enrolled in the universities with the understanding that the government's support would cover their academic fees. Acting in good faith, these students took loans, delayed other financial commitments, and made painful sacrifices, all with the belief that help was on its way. But months have passed, and the financial support remained phantom promise. There has been no reimbursements, no clarifications, and no sense of urgency from authorities. Students continue to face eviction threats, denial of access of academic resources, and in some cases, disqualification from writing exams due to unpaid fees. Even more disheartening is the government's unfulfilled promise to provide free tertiary education for persons living with disabilities. And this is one of the things that even sounds so sad. The president took such opportunity during his manifesto to move forward to even promise persons with disability. Such promises to people with disability clearly state how the president only thought about his political ambition to become president and never thought about the will of persons with disability. And that is why he even went ahead and more further to even promise those who are disabled. And that is wrong, Mr. President. This was not just a policy. It was a public declaration of inclusivity and equity for students living with disabilities who already face physical, social, and systematic barriers. The promise of free tertiary education was a long overdue act of justice. Yet, like many other promises, it has not materialized. Students with disability continue to be subjected to the same financial struggles, often compounded by additional medical and accessibility-related expenses. The government inaction here goes beyond neglect. It is a failure of conscience. This is not just disappointing. It is a betrayal of trust. It dishonors the aspirations of thousands of young Ghanaians and undermines the very principles of social justice and accountability. Education is not a privilege, it is a right. A government that claims patronizes youth and inclusivity cannot continue to make promises it has no intention of keeping. And then one thing that I believe is that the free tuition that the president added as part of his 120 days social contract was only a way to deceive and then to buy votes from innocent citizens of this country. There are a lot of families out there who made up the point or took decisions to even enroll their kids even in the next academic year. But because of the free tuition that President John Dramani Mahama added to his 120 days social contract, people had to go and take loans. People had to go and sell important items just to fund their kids. But all these things finally landed as ways of deceiving Ghanaians in his way to become president. NDC's contradictory promises of ending double track were Ghanaians misled for votes. In the lead up of the 2020 elections, the NDC, under the leadership of the former President John Dramani Mahama, made a firm and a clear promise to abolish the double track system introduced under the free senior high school. Sorry, the lead up of the 2024 elections, not 2020. This promise was not vague or conditional. It was a headline commitment echoed across campaign platforms, media engagements, and the party's own manifesto. The NDC criticized a double-track system as a sign of poor planning and inadequate infrastructure, arguing that it disrupted the academic calendar. So this was their own words. During the day of President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, the double track was one of the initiative from the Ghana Education Service that they implemented, but then it was intended to improve when we came or when we had power in the just ended general election. But because of political power, because of political deception, the NDC added such policy as part of their policies, and also 100 days and 20 days in their social contract. The NDC criticized the double track system as a sign of poor planning and inadequate infrastructure, arguing that it disrupted the academic calendar, reduced contract hours, placed stress on teachers and students, and diluted the quality of secondary education. The pledge to swiftly phase it out and replace it with a well-planned, infrastructure-backed single-track system that would restore normalcy and enhance learning outcome. This promise gave hope to many Ghanaians, parents and educators who were frustrated by the challenges of the system. Ghanaians were assured by several high-ranking members of the NDC of swift and decisive action. Johnson Esiedu Nketia, the then General Secretary and now the Chairman of the NDC, confidently told Ghanaians the system would be ended within the 90 days of the NDC assuming office. That was in 2020 general elections. Dr. Clement Apak, then member of the Education Committee of Parliament and now Deputy Minister of Education, re-echoed this commitment, reinforcing the party's one-year timeline. These statements were made before the elections and served as a central campaign message used to secure the trust and vote of students, parents, and teachers across the country. However, post-elections, the tone and the timeline have drastically shifted. Recently, the Honorable Haruna Idrisu, the Education Minister, stated that the double-track system will now be phased by 2027. This is a total deception into power. The youth of Ghana have totally been deceived by the National Democratic Congress. And we as the youth will stand to make sure we make them accountable to each and every policy that was stated in their manifesto. We cannot be misled. We cannot be deceived. free, and we are rising as youth to protect our rights and to protect whatever that is due us. This dramatic shift raises serious questions about credibility, transparency, political integrity. Was there ever a realistic plan to end this double track within the timeline promised? Or were these campaign messages crafted merely to exploit public frustration and to win votes? And this is what we've witnessed by the National Democratic Congress. We have been totally deceived. 120 days of deception, 120 days of sorrow, 120 days of full deception. And we, as Tescon ATU, are ready to rise and to make sure the National Democratic Congress is being held accountable. Doomsor, how long must Ghanaians wait? Ghanaians were promised change, relief, and bold action, especially in the areas of education and infrastructure. Yet today we are confronted not only with broken promises on ending the double track system, but also a resurgence of doomsor, an unrelenting power crisis that is crippling lives, businesses, and education across the country. Doomsor is back. The king of doomsor, John Dramani Mahama, is back, and it is hitting us hard. The erratic power cuts, now occurring frequently across all regions, have become a daily nightmare. This